Success isn't what most people think it is. In fact, research shows that 92% of New Year's resolutions fail, and it's not because of bad luck or circumstances, it's because of four specific patterns that keep people stuck.
That's such a striking statistic. And what's really fascinating is how these patterns show up across different cultures and income levels.
Well, let's dive into the first major pattern, our addiction to comfort. The neuroscience here is pretty remarkable. Studies show that every time we choose the easy path, we're actually rewiring our brain to seek more comfort.
That explains why breaking out of these patterns gets harder over time. What's the biological mechanism behind that?
So here's what's happening. Our brain releases dopamine when we choose immediate pleasure, like scrolling social media instead of working on our goals. Over time, we need more and more of these comfort hits to feel satisfied.
You know what's interesting about that? Research from Stanford showed that people who regularly practice discomfort actually have higher stress resilience scores.
Exactly right. And this connects to why successful people often have the seemingly unusual morning routines. Cold showers, early workouts, meditation. They're all about training that discomfort muscle.
Speaking of training, let's talk about how this connects to the blame pattern you mentioned. The data on this is pretty eye-opening.
Well, a fascinating study from the University of Colorado found that people with an internal locus of control, meaning they take responsibility for their circumstances, earn on average 40% more than those with an external locus of control.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. The economic impact of these mindset patterns is huge.
And here's what's really interesting. This pattern shows up way before career success. Studies of students show that those who attribute their grades to their own efforts versus external factors consistently perform better over time.
So how do we actually break these patterns? Because understanding them is one thing, but changing them is another entirely.
Well, the research points to something called implementation intentions, basically creating specific if-then plans for how you will handle challenges. For example, if I feel the urge to procrastinate, then I'll work for just 5 minutes.
That reminds me of the famous marshmallow experiment with delayed gratification. The kids who succeeded weren't just naturally more disciplined.
Right? They had strategies. They would look away from the marshmallow, sing songs, or imagine it was something else. It's not about willpower, it's about systems.
You know what's fascinating about systems? The data on how they affect productivity is pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah. Studies show that people who use systems and automation can be up to 500% more productive than those who rely on motivation alone. But here's the catch. Most people work hard without working smart.
Well, that explains why some entrepreneurs can run multiple successful businesses, while others struggle with just one.
And this brings us to the third major pattern, the relationship between strategic thinking and success. The most successful people spend about 20% of their time doing and 80% thinking and planning.
That completely flips the traditional hustle culture narrative on its head, doesn't it?
Exactly. And when you look at the data, entrepreneurs who take time for strategic planning grow their businesses 30% faster than those who don't.
Let's talk about the fourth pattern, fear of failure. The statistics here are pretty revealing.
Well, get this. A study of successful entrepreneurs showed they failed an average of 3.8 times before hitting their big success. But here's the key. They fail faster and learn from each attempt.
That reminds me of the concept of intelligent failure in innovation research.
Right? And companies that encourage intelligent failure are 34% more innovative than those with a zero-tolerance approach to mistakes.
So how do we actually implement all of this in our daily lives?
Well, the research suggests starting with what's called minimum viable discomfort, small manageable challenges that gradually build your resilience. Maybe it's making one cold call, having one difficult conversation, or trying one new thing each day.
And I imagine tracking these small wins is important too.
Absolutely crucial. Studies show that people who track their progress are 42% more likely to achieve their goals. But here's the key. You need to track the right metrics, not just the easy ones.
Well, this has been incredibly enlightening. Any final thoughts on what our listeners should focus on first?
The data is clear. Start with your morning routine. People who have a structured morning routine are 167% more likely to achieve their goals. But remember, it's not about copying someone else's routine. It's about building systems that work for you.
Thank you for breaking this down so clearly. Until next time, everyone.